We're continuing the Maimer of Shabbos Parshas Shlach, Tavshin Yud Aleph, Mevorchim HaChodesh Tammuz. In the Maimer, the Rebbe is explaining the advantage and the virtues of mitzvahs maisius, practical mitzvahs, that this is what was the Chadash, this is what the Jewish people received upon coming into Eretz Yisrael. So in order to explain the idea of mitzvahs maisius, so the Rebbe explains the difference between Shor HaBor and Levyasan. We know that in the future, in the time of Mashiach, there will be a kinigyon, a wrestling match, so to speak, between the Shor HaBor and the Levyasan, and that represents the two types of things that there are in this world. The general concept is the war between good and bad, but more specifically, it's two types of good and two ways of elevating the world. One manner is the Shor HaBor, which is the physical world, by elevating and refining the physical world, and the other manner is the Levyasan, which is elevating and refining this world by connecting to spirituality. And the two types, as we explained last time, is the difference between Alma Diskasya and Alma Disgalya. The Levyasan is a fish. The fish is in the ocean, where it's covered fully by the water, where it's fully connected to its source. Its entire existence is its source, which is the idea of spirituality. That's all that exists for it. What's its avodah in the world? Swimming back and forth, meaning going from one level to the next in Kedusha, in the holiness. Elevating and refining, connecting the worlds, the spiritual worlds, one with another. And then there's the avodah of Shor HaBor. The Shor HaBor is an Alma Disgalya, revealed world. It's not connected to its source. It lives upon this earth. The creatures of the earth are not connected. It's not necessary for their life and for their existence to be connected to their source. On the contrary, they feel themselves as an existence on its own, as a separate existence, and their mission is to be involved with the physical world and to elevate and refine the physical world. So if we look at the two types of tzaddikim, there's one type of tzaddik that his avodah, his work in this world involves refining the physical. It comes Shabbos, he eats meat in order to elevate the meat. His entire world is about dealing with the physical and material world in order to elevate it, and in fact fighting and iskafia, overcoming the evil, and on the other hand, realizing and recognizing the truth of Hashem in the world. There's another type of tzaddik which is Levyasan. The Levyasan is referred to in the Zohar as Nunei Yama de Mahalchim B'Yabeshta, which means fish, creatures of the sea that walk upon the earth. The tzaddik is in a physical world, is in a physical body, but yet his true existence is he's a creature of the ocean. His entire existence is spirituality, his connection to spirituality. Such tzaddikim were such as Reb Shimon ben Yochai, the Arizal, and as the Tzemach Tzedek points out, also the Baal Shem Tov, and like the Rebbe points out, also the Alter Rebbe, and the Tzaddikim, the Rabbeim, that follow the Alter Rebbe. These Tzaddikim, their existence is spirituality. They don't deal with the physical world. And such as, and as we mentioned last time, Reb Shimon ben Yochai, when he was in the Maira, when he was in the cave, he didn't have with what to fulfill mitzvahs. He didn't have lulav and esrik. He didn't have the ability to build a sukkah. He didn't have a shofar to blow on Rosh Hashanah. He didn't have matzah to eat on Pesach. And yet this was Reb Shimon ben Yochai. It's true that his life was in danger. It was pikuach nefesh. It was a question of saving his life, but it's impossible to say that someone like Reb Shimon ben Yochai was lacking from the fact that he didn't have these mitzvahs. To explain this concept a little bit more, imagine there's two types of Jews. There's a Jew sitting in jail in communist Russia for spreading Yiddishkeit. He does everything in his power to be able to hold on to Yiddishkeit. Comes Pesach, he fasts for 8 days because the matzahs didn't arrive. It comes Seder night, he sits down and he thinks in his mind all the mamarim and Likutei Torah and all the mamarim and Chassidus that discuss the deep meaning of matzah. He imagines in his mind eating matzah, and he imagines all the secrets and all the Chassidus explanations of matzah. And yet, he didn't eat matzah. He's lacking matzah. He's missing it. On the other hand, you can have a Jew who's walking in Manhattan, and someone walks up to him and says to him, "Are you Jewish?" "Yes." "Here, take this matzah, eat it on Pesach night." He takes it because he can't say no, and he eats the matzah together with his treifa sandwich. He doesn't know what it means, he doesn't know the deeper meaning, he knows that he's doing a mitzvah. Which one fulfilled the mitzvah? Not only that, the one who doesn't understand the meaning of matzah, the fact is he ate matzah. He did the mitzvah of eating matzah. The one sitting with Mesiras Nefesh, who had no choice, he's sitting there because of his Mesiras Nefesh, because of his self-sacrifice for spreading Yiddishkeit. He won't even eat chametz. He did everything in his ability to get matzah. And yet, he doesn't have matzah, and he's lacking. His neshama is missing the hamshachas that comes reading matzah. What does he have to do for it? There's the famous stories of Chassidim that came to the Rebbe after having sat in prison for spreading Yiddishkeit. And they asked the Rebbe, "What did we do? I missed out on the mitzvahs. I wasn't able to put on tefillin. I wasn't able to eat matzah." And the Rebbe told these people, "You have to go and make sure to find other Jews who don't have these mitzvahs. Help them do the mitzvah, and in this way you'll be filling your soul's need for these specific mitzvahs." The Rebbe didn't say you don't need it. Because a soul, a physical body, a regular soul that comes into this world, who's nunei yabeshta, the creatures of the dry land, has a need for the physical action, the physical mitzvahs, in order to connect him with Hashem. But then there's different types of neshamas. Reb Shimon ben Yochai, the Arizal, the Rabbeim, their existence is spiritual. They don't need the physical world in order to connect to Hashem. Their connection comes from a spiritual way. Their connection is one which is so much deeper. Their entire existence is spirituality. Their entire existence is godliness. And yet, the Rebbe says, although on one hand it's obvious and understandable that these holy tzaddikim are on a much higher level, they're nunei yama, they're creatures of the ocean, of the alma diskasya, of the hidden world, but there still is an advantage and an added virtue in fulfilling practical mitzvahs. And we see this first of all from the very fact that even Reb Shimon ben Yochai, or even the tzaddikim who are nunei yama, who are creatures of the ocean, unless they are in a situation of ayness, unless they're in a situation where they have no choice, where their life is in danger, as Rav Shimon ben Yochai, or where they simply don't have the mitzvahs, they too have to fulfill the practical mitzvahs. Even though for their neshama it's not necessary, but yet the greatness of practical mitzvahs is something that's not lost even on them. They're not lacking it. But in a time when they're able to do it, they have to do it. And this is the idea that we say, V'achayis noisois es akisei, noisois umunusois im akisei. The chayis, the spiritual animals, so to speak, they lift up Hashem's royal throne. They lift up through the existence of the physical world. That's what gives the ability to lift up even the spiritual worlds. Because of their bittul, because of their feeling of lowness and of how distant they are from the spiritual existence. Because of their feelings of yearning for the deeper spiritual existence that they don't have. They therefore are able to be lifted up, but together with that to actually lift up the spiritual existence of the world itself. And that's something about the idea of Shoir Habar. Shoir Habar is Rav Tvois B'Koyach Shoir. It's specifically the ox that has the power to give force to the abundance of produce. The ability to give force in the world, the ability to give force in the spiritual world as well, is something which is specifically in the power of the ox. And that's something we mentioned earlier, that's why it says that the Shoir Habar is noititz l'Livyasan b'karnav. Although on one hand the Livyasan, which Livyasan comes from the word Yilave, connecting. The Livyasan connects to godliness. And with its fins, what it swims with, which is its powers, it's like its wings that lift it up. It shechts, meaning it draws the Shoir Habar, it draws the physical world to Klois HaNefesh, to a yearning. The fact that the physical world realizes and recognizes the spirituality brings it to a yearning of Klois HaNefesh, of wanting to connect to its source. And yet, there's something that the karnav, the horns, the most coarse and material part of the ox, the very essence of materialism, it elevates, it lifts up even the Levyasan, the spiritual worlds, because it's specifically down here that there's the power to actually lift up the spiritual worlds. And the idea of this, and the reason for this, is like it says in the pasuk, Lo ya'ala lechem levadoi yichya ha'adam, kal kol meitza pi havaya yichya ha'adam. A person doesn't live. He isn't sustained and vitalized from only bread, but from Moitza Pi Havaya, from what comes out of the mouth of Hashem. And the Arizal explains that when a person is hungry for food, it's not the physical food that the person is hungry for, but it's rather the Moitza Pi Havaya, the spiritual spark that sustains the food, that his soul yearns for and wants to be able to take it and elevate it. And the question is, why does the person need the spark of godliness that's in the food? What about the spark of godliness that's in him, in the person himself? Why is the only way that a person can live and be sustained by getting the spark of godliness that's in the food? And the explanation that Chassidus explains is that the higher something is, the lower down it comes. The fact that the spark in the food came into the world of vegetation, or even more than that, in certain foods it came into the world of the inanimate. It came down. Therefore, it has the power to sustain and to give strength to the spark that's within the person, within the human world. the lower something comes, that means the higher it is. The physical world, the power of being able to elevate the physical world, and the most coarse place of the physical world, the inanimate parts of the physical world, has the power to elevate even the Levyasan, has the power to elevate even the most spiritual beings, because it's through refining and elevating the physical, that spark, which is really the highest, and that has the power to be able to bring forth a much more powerful spiritual energy, and like Mr. Shem will continue to explain.